Good morning, students. Today we are here to learn the advantages and disadvantages of different types of test. The first advantage is the tests are useful for checking information in applicants. Whatever information the applicant have given, whether it's correct or incorrect, that has to be checked through the test. And test is nothing but it's just a medium, a parameter to check, to judge people. Point number two, another advantage is it provides additional information. Tests provide additional information about the candidate. When we take a test of the candidate, we come to know how a candidate is, how well he can perform, how well a candidate can work on, how well a candidate can prove himself or herself. Point number three, another advantage is it helps to reduce the bias in selection. When you give a test, there is no point in being biased because a person will prove himself according to the merit. Because the test, if the person has proved himself good in the test, that means he's good. Or if he's proved bad in the test, that means he's bad. So there is no point of personal bias. You cannot be personally biased in this case in selection process. So in that case, test is very good option. Point number four, it establishes a performance standard. You set a standard of performance that if a person performs this much, then he is selected. So through that medium of the test, you can find out which standard you are going to select, which standard you are going to use. And then there are certain disadvantages as well for the test. The first disadvantage is it's not fully reliable. This method of the test is not fully reliable. That means you cannot fully rely on the test. Point number two, it cannot measure all the qualification. Like you cannot measure all the different aspects of the person, of a candidate. Point number three, it is time consuming and expensive method. You know what? Test is obviously time consuming. It takes a lot of time, and it is at the same time it is expensive as well. As you can see now, you can understand how much time is taken in taking the test, and it will take, of course, money is involved. There are certain people who are been appointed to take the test. There are people who are supposed to judge, to take the interview, and so many other things. So that is why this is another disadvantage where time and money is used. Another set we have on the slide, you can see it's a psychological test. The psychological test is nothing but actually it's a type of a test. Under this is what is happening in this is, under such type of test, what we are doing is a psychological test is an objective and standardized measure of a sample of behavior from which inferences about future behavior and performance of the candidates are drawn. If you are taking a psychological test, you will come to know how a person will behave. Like this is important, a psychological test. When we talk about psychological test, this is what you have to understand. His behavior and performance of the candidate are drawn. These 2 points are very important in this. The performance of the candidate, the behavior of the candidate is judged through these type of tests. Psychological tests are being increasingly used nowadays for selection of the employees, obviously. These tests provide a systematic procedure for sampling human behavior. You know what, we all know that tests can also be employed in decision concerning, like we can take, suppose somebody's placement is there, for that a test can be taken. Somebody's promotion is, you have to take, promotion decision have to be taken. For that also you can go for a test. Then somebody's transfer also you need a test. For counseling, for training you need a test. Like suppose if a person needs a training or not, for that also if you take a test you'll come to know that he needs a training. Psychological tests are based on the assumption that no two individuals are equal in terms of intelligence, aptitude, attitude, personality, and other traits. Understood? These type of tests are very useful. The nature and the degree of one's psychological and other characteristics are measured. Through this, what we are doing, we are not only measuring the characteristic, we are also measuring the entire thing. We are measuring the entire thing. You know what? We are measuring what? The psychology, and not only the psychology, we are also measuring the personality, we are also measuring the other traits like characteristic, his nature. We are through the test will come to know. The purpose of these tests is to judge the ability of a candidate. Why we are taking this test? We want to find out how the candidate is behaving. That means candidate's ability. We judge everything about candidate, how the candidate is behaving. His ability is judged. We judge the ability of the candidate through these type of tests. Have I made myself clear for the test? Okay, these tests are also called psychological tests because they have been designed largely by the psychologist, not an individual person or a layman. It has been designed by the psychologist. So we have different types of tests we have in the category. There are so many different types of tests which you will be doing when you will be doing your theoretical part. At that time, we'll be doing it in detail. I'll be giving you a note of it in the registers. You have to maintain that. But for your information, right, for now, you can know that we have different types of tests. Psychological test, of course. The first one is the aptitude test. Then we have the mental intelligence test. Then we have the mechanical test. Then we have the psychomotor test. For the achievement test, we are having job knowledge test, we have work sample test, we have for personality test, we have. Then we have the objective test. Then we have the projective test. Then we have the situation test. Then we have the interest level test. I mean, there are so many different types of tests which you have to learn when you will be attending your class, and through the theory you will be learning it. Because all these type of tests have to be written down in detail, and you need to write a note on them, and then you need to explain them individually. For that, we will be doing all this in detail once we come back, and then we will be doing the different types and the explanation of the different types of psychological tests, different types of tests once we come back. So till now, it's that much you have to study from here. Thank you. Good morning, students. Once again, we are back here with the interviews. This time we will be discussing about the interviews. I hope you have finished the assignments given for the different types of tests, for the name which I have discussed with you. Now listen here, each and everything, whatever has been discussed is important. So kindly note down all the words which a teacher is speaking, which a teacher is explaining, and you need to write them up. That is the only way we can communicate with each other. There is no other way, right? So now in this slide here we have the interview. So what is an interview? This is a basic question which it creeps into the mind of everyone. What is it actually? Interview is nothing but it's just a face-to-face interaction between two persons for a particular purpose. That means when two people are for a particular purpose, they are discussing on a certain issue, on a certain point, that is an interview. It is widely used not only in employee selection, but it is also used for placement, for orientation, for appraisal, for any kind of disciplinary action, for exit or interview, for separation interviews been done, for counseling also we take the interview, for general problem solving you go for the interview. I mean, there's so many different ways, different reasons where you have the interviews. It's also employed to screen the candidate. You know what? That is very important for admission into the institute or certain thing. That is why we say it's a very purposeful exchange of views. Actually, what is happening? It is not a sheer wastage of time. Here, what we are doing something useful. It is a purposeful exchange of views. The answering of question and communication between two or more person. One is asking, the other is answering. The response, the feedback, that is important. Question has been asked and the other person is answering him back. Then we have, it's not very important, but still you can note down the different importance of interview or objectives of interview. Please note down. I'm waiting. Yes, note down. Point number 1, you write down. Why we go for the interview? The first point you can write down to cross-check or verify the information obtained in the earlier steps. You know, you need to cross-check or verify what the candidate had said in the earlier steps. Next, number 2, to judge the candidate's qualification and characteristic so as to decide whether or not you have to select him or not. Point number 3, once again, point number 2, to judge the candidate's qualification and characteristic. You go for the test. Point number 3, to give the candidate essential fact about the job and the company. You have to know the candidate. At the same time, the candidate also should know your company and the company laws and rules and job details and everything about the company, right? So with this kind of a test, with this type of interview, you are face to face with that person and you're discussing everything. To establish, point number 4, to establish a rapport or a mutual understanding between the company and the candidate. This is again very important. You establish a mutual understanding between the company and the candidate. Understood? An understanding is built between the company and the candidate. You know what? That is very important. Now, all this not enough. We know what? When we talk about interview, there are certain types of interview. When we talk about interview, there are people who are involved in certain steps involved in the interviews. Then we have different types of interviews. Again, I'll tell you, we have got several types of interviews, but I will be again giving you a notes on that once we are face to face. Obviously, that time we'll be writing the different names or the different types of interview. We have different categories. Like for example, let me tell you some. That first one is informal interview. Another type is a formal interview. Third type is a patterned or structured interview. Fourth is a non-structured or unstructured interview. Fifth one is depth interview. Sixth is the group interview. Seventh is the stress interview. Eighth is a panel or board interview. There are different types of interviews which have to be taken care of, and we cannot leave out any types because you should know what these different types of interviews are. And that is what I cannot tell each and everything. You have to note down certain things. For that, we'll be there with you, and maybe whenever I come back, whenever we have our meeting, that time I'll be giving you, kindly ask me the different types of interviews. We'll be noting down what are the different types of interview. I'll try to make it shorter by giving you answer in short. So till that time, that's all for this slide. And in the next slide, we'll be discussing about the importance and the objectives of interview, as we have already discussed earlier. And I believe with this we come to the end of this staff selection process. There are certain more slides which we have for other purpose, but for this reason, for staff selection, that's the end of the slide. And now we'll be moving on to another topic which I will be disclosing in my next slide. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Here we are going to discuss another sets of selection procedure. Today we have the medical or physical examination. As I told you, this medical or physical examination is normally for overseas candidate, not for us. But still we have this in the selection procedure. Why is this medical examination done? What is the reason behind it? Why? And my question is why? Why? Why is my question? Why is the medical or physical examination done? Candidates who are found suitable are going through physical examination. A medical checkup of such candidate is done by a panel of doctors to ensure that they are healthy and physically fit for the job. Because you cannot keep someone who is not healthy or who is not physically fit. For that purpose, we need a proper medical checkup. A proper medical examination is done by the doctors who are appointed for the purpose. A proper medical examination will also ensure that the candidates selected do not suffer from any kind of serious injury, serious diseases, or any kind of problem or anything which can come up in the future. So for that reason, the medical or the physical examination is important. Now moving on to the next category, and that is checking references. When we say checking references, we all know now the reference of each and every candidate have to be checked. Every candidate is required to state in the application form the names and the address of at least two responsible person, and those responsible person are the references. So what are we going to do? So these persons are contacted in writing or over the telephone. Now so we have telephones and emails. Through that we contact them, and the company collects the information about the candidate's background from his references. His ability, his character, every detail has been taken care of. Everything has been calculated. Everything is found about him. Moreover, information given by them may be biased, maybe in the favor of candidate. There are chances, because you know what? You are very clever. You are going to give the reference of those people who are really good to you, right? So ultimately, can be a biased way. Now moving on to the next slide, that is the final approval. The candidates who are found suitable after the medical checkup and the background investigation done are formally appointed by issuing them appointment letters. You know what? Come and join the job. You have been given appointment letter, and after the appointment letter they are asked to join the duty on a specified date. Come by from this date, you are approved, or you are coming. As you can see in the figure, it's quite mentioned approved. The image is also relevant. No selection procedure is foolproof, and the best way to judge a person is by observing him working on the job, right? So you are asked to come and join the job, and after you are asked to come and join the job comes the last but not the least, that is a placement. As I told you, you are being placed at a particular post. Selected candidates are put up or posted on the appropriate job. This is called placement. As I told you, you are placed on the job. It is a process of assigning specific job and workplace to the selected candidates. You now, sir, this is your workplace. You have to work here. This is your job profile. These type of work have to be done by you. All these have to be made very clear to the candidates. It involves matching the candidates and to put together the elements of an abstract situation. Now, you know what? I'm going to match the candidate. Proper placement helps to improve work efficiency and satisfaction of employees. You know what? When I am putting right person to the right job, then I'll have good work efficiency. So even the placement is very important. Whom I am placing, whom I am giving what posts, which post has been given to which candidate, everything counts at the end of the day. This is what every detail, every minute detail is important for a success of a company. While placing the employees, the requirement of both the organization and the candidate should be taken into consideration. This is very important. After the final approval, we have the placement, and the employees are placed on the specific job. Thank you. And yes, of course, before thank you, I must tell you this is the end of the selection procedure. And after this, we'll be discussing about different topics, but the selection procedure ends till the placement. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Here now, once again, we are here to discuss about the objectives and importance of interview. As I've already discussed earlier, still I am giving you in writing some of the things so you can see, you can note down the objectives and importance of interviews. I've already discussed in the previous slide, but this is just a detail about it. Many of you I know have not written it down. So what I have decided is that I have made another slide for the purpose, and I'm then floating it to you. So kindly note this down directly or save it in your file, whatever, and explanation has already been given. Now we have another, there are different, as I told you, there are different things which you have to learn. Not only this, we also have different other things. Apart from this, as I told you, we have so many things to learn. We are also on the verge of learning things, and that is not the end. There are so many other things which have to be taken care of. There is one very important thing, that's the limitation of interview, which is missing out from here. So you can note it down. I'm waiting. Have a pen and paper in your hand and note down what could be the limitation of interview. The first limitation is a personal bias. What do you understand by the word personal bias? You know what? The interviewer can be biased. Maybe his way of perception, his way of thinking, he may be that means interviewer, like other people, have personal biases. Like we have our own choices, no, our own likes and dislike. Maybe if that person is good, but I'm not liking him, right? Maybe that person is bad, but I'm liking him. So there are chances of that is called personal bias. Point number 2, you can write down halo effect. HALO, halo effect. EFFECT, effect. What is the halo effect? You know what halo effect is? Like an interviewer conclude that a poorly groomed candidate is stupid. Like person is not properly dressed, he's not properly presentable, that means he's stupid. This is another problem. That's called halo effect, where you judge people and make error by judging on the basis of a single prominent characteristic. Okay? Point number 3, you note down constant error. There are problem of this. There's a problem like we have this mindset, no? Such error arises, write down, such error arises because the interview of the previous candidate unduly influenced the interviewer in favor or against the candidate. Like means in favor or against the candidate. It means what? That means I started judging candidate number 2 with candidate number 1. I started comparing them. I started thinking who among them are better. So that is the constant error which people do. Point number 4, leniency. At times what happened? The person who's taking the interview may be lenient. Okay? It implies a tendency to assign high scores. Some people have the habit of giving high scores. And some interviewer, they don't give them scores. So ultimately there's a point called leniency, and the opposite of leniency is what? Toughness. On the other hand, maybe the other interviewer is tough. So he'll give you a tough marking. And on one hand, maybe the person is very lenient in marking, so he'll give you a good marking. Another point number 6, point number 5, that is stereotyping. Another point, stereotyping, point number 5. Okay, point number 5, you write down stereotyping. What is stereotyping? STEREO, stereo, TYPING, stereotyping. What is it? Stereotyping is the error which arises when the interviewer believes in some association between the personality and a particular trait. For example, when you start thinking that this person is from a rural area, so his hygiene habit is not good. He is not hygienic because he belongs to a village. He belongs to rural areas, so he is not hygienic like me. Understood? When this comes in your mind, then what happened? The interviewer can make a wrong judgment. The interviewer gives a judgment in which there are chances of errors in that cases. So that is again another limitation of interview. Now we have also, as I told you, along with this, since this is the last slide we are working on, so now we have, as you can see, the guidelines of effective interviewing. Very simple guidelines are given, 6 are given there. I believe you can at least study 4 from there. Interview should have an element of privacy. Point number 1. Point number 2 should be based on a checklist of what to look for in a candidate. That means you should know which quality you have to look for in a candidate. And then point number 4 is easier. Proper method of interview should be employed. I mean, it's not that you are using different methods for different people. No, one method is to be utilized for everyone. Then a specific set of guidelines should be given to the interviewers. The interviewer should know on what basis or on what criteria they have to judge the people. They have to interview the people. And the last point, the interviewer should try to minimize his personal bias or prejudice. At times what happens, you have your personal choices. You become biased. You become personally biased. You start selecting those people whom you like, who comes in your frame, who comes in your mentality. So ultimately, you should not be taking in that way. You should think over that you are there to select a person, you are there to take an interview, and you should not be personal bias, and above all, your prejudice should not come in the way of selection, in the way of taking the interview. That's it for this lesson. With this, we come to the end of the slide and the end of the lesson. With this, we finish our staff selection. Okay, now we'll be starting with the new slide, new topic, new lesson from the next class. Till then, stay safe, stay at home, take care,